Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about a little bit of an update around the NCAA against the House case, a little bit of an NIL back pay case that is going to have a lot of long impacting and long stretching implications from this. So broke down a little bit of what you can kind of expect from there and what some of the consequences are going to be, because it could get a little bit messy. But let's get into something else that could make the college football world just a little bit more messy. It sounds like there has been an idea thrown out there to have even more bowl games going forward. This has been something that has been thrown out there for quite some time, and something that has been kind of going around NCAA over the last little bit. They talked about increasing March Madness from 68 teams to 80 teams recently, something that I tend to expect to happen, which I wish it wouldn't, but that's a totally different thing. I'll let Nelson over on the basketball podcast handle that. But overall, I think it's one of those things where, given this new NIL back pay case and given the revenue sharing and all of the new bills that are about to come forth in these athletic departments across the country, you're looking for new ways to make money, right? You're looking for new ways for your school to get on national television, to have more TV deals, to do the things that will at least keep you afloat, right? So obviously, postseason is an area to do that. Bowl games is a great place to do that. So we talked about kind of the NIL structure and how you're kind of trying to curb opt-outs in these bowl games, which has been a huge issue for quite some time. They want you to play 12 games in the regular season and a bowl game no matter what. That's something that a contract model or an employment model will get you much easier. As we just found out, that has been a little bit more sketchy with the new sentiment that was sent out there by the College Football Players Association, but it's still very much in the cards. I think that's definitely a very real possibility. Nick Carparelli, I think I pronounced his name wrong last time, so I apologize about that. But Nick Carparelli, the bowl season director, is someone that has kind of been pushing this for quite some time and has conversations with athletic department heads, and has said they are very much in favor of this, which makes sense. You know, if you're going to smaller schools and they want a piece of that pie when it comes to postseason revenue, so that totally makes sense. He says that there's not enough full opportunities for a real postseason in the new model that we're throwing out there. So it's something that I'm kind of on the fence about. As we've seen over the last couple of years, there haven't been enough bowl eligible teams to fit in the last 3 years, I believe. There've been a couple of 5-win teams that have made bowl games, is the way I was supposed to say that. You had Rutgers in 2021, Rice in 2022, and then Minnesota this past year, all made bowl games as 5 and 7 teams. So you'd have to expand the parameters. That's something that's obvious. I don't really know how that would work, because as we all know, once you get down to 5 and 7 between 3 and 9, that's kind of just a conference and schedule type thing more than anything else. So it'll be interesting to see how that is all kind of played out. But we talked about the opt-outs. It's a huge topic of conversation. It sounds like at least 78 players opt out of the bowl games. A year ago, 431 entered the transfer portal before their bowl games. So it gives you an idea of just where we're at in how these players view these bowl games. And I can get into this into a more lengthy segment. Oh my gosh. A lengthy segment later on. But overall, I think that's something that just needs to be fixed with the calendar. That's just something that needs to be handled that way, because there's so many different confusing things that go on in December, and clearing up some of that would be a huge part of this conversation. But overall, I mean, we talked about it last week, Florida State being kind of the poster child for this, 33 players not playing in the Orange Bowl, where they just got demolished by Georgia in every sense of the word. So it kind of brought this to the attention of everyone. And, you know, the fans have been yelling this for quite some time. We want to see the best players out there, and they're trying to do their best to create that atmosphere. So it's just an idea right now. It's something that's being kicked around. Probably will take a little bit of time to implement and set up everything, get new sponsors, and there's tons of, you know, red tape to get through before you can set up these new bowl games. But from my point of view, and maybe I'm alone in this, I don't know, but from my point of view, I do think there is a certain level of trying to expand something before you've made it good. And that sounds, maybe a little bit intense and a little bit aggressive towards the bull season, but I think we've all seen over the last couple of years that the bull season just doesn't feel like it did in the past. I remember when I was growing up, every single game felt huge. You were setting up, on a Tuesday to watch football. It was awesome. It was never anything where you were thinking, well, my team's not in the playoffs, so why do I care? My team's not in a New Year's Six game, why do I care type of thing. That was never really a conversation. And it's something that has been created by, somewhat, people in media saying that, yeah, these games don't matter. Just outright saying that up front and then getting mad at players for listening to them, but that's a totally different conversation. I think when you look at kind of the future of college football, when you look at all of the things that need to be fixed, adding more bowl games is way down on the list. Like 50 to 100 on the list of things that need to be fixed before we get there. So I would love to just see a less messy system in the postseason before we start adding to it, where you have a more crystalline schedule where it's not overlapping with a ton of different things happening in December, and you have very, very strict transfer portal windows, and all of this different stuff is just kind of worked out to a better degree. You have the employment or whatever that looks like, the payment structure in place for college athletes going forward. You just need to make some common sense steps forward before you can do this, really, to be totally honest, because I know you want to create more money for these teams. I know you want to create more of a influx for the new bills that are coming down the road, but the reality is I do think there is this idea that creating more opportunities for these teams will create more money is an idea for sure, and it definitely is something that could come to fruition, but doing it in a messy system doesn't help these teams at all. It puts them probably in more danger, partly because there's going to be just so much more confusion, there's going to be so much more things to pay for in the grand scheme of things, and it doesn't necessarily help them from a financial perspective if you just add another thing to their plate. I think you need to add it once they're fully ready to take it, right? You want to make sure that everyone is in a good place financially before you throw out more of these ideas, but there's a ton of stuff going on with the postseason. I mean, the Group of Five playoff is something that we've talked about a number of times, and it sounds like that is something that is kind of on the outside looking in as of right now. It feels like that idea has not been fully fleshed out. The Mountain West Commissioner, Gloria Nevarez, said it's just not a proposal that has been, she hasn't seen a proposal, let's say, that has been enticing to her by any means, to leave the current contract they have with the college football playoff to do something else. But I said it, last week, I'll say it again. I do think we're at a place in college football where it kind of needs to be segmented. I wish that wasn't the case, to be totally honest with you. I'd love to have one cohesive college football where you can play everyone and you have everyone kind of intermingling with each other, but the second that this became professional sports, the second that you added NIL into the conversation, was you started a clock, essentially, on all the small teams and all the big teams, really, to kind of take over the sport. It was always going to happen whenever, finances became even a bigger part of the sport. These guys were going to flex their muscles even more. And I think the Group of Five, their best option, in my opinion, is to break off, have their own playoff, have maybe a situation where the regular season overlaps with Power 5 just a little bit, but you still have your own playoff, and then you can get back together for the postseason for those lower level bowl games. So I think there's options here, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't know if the Group of Five playoff is, or the Group of Five, new league or whatever you want to call it, is kind of an idea that is fully fleshed out at this point. I think Derek Dooley and his group have a little bit of work there to be done in terms of just ironing out details, making sure that everyone's on the same page, and then most importantly, really just kind of making sure the finances work out for everyone involved, because you don't want to leave a situation for the idea that the finances could be better somewhere else. You want to make sure that they absolutely are, and you're getting more money than you would get from the college football playoff, which is a pretty tall order for the most part. So this is probably a little bit down the road. I think this is probably the best way to go about the postseason, where you have two different playoffs, but you have one cohesive bowl season where all of the teams that are on the top tier of the group of five and on the top tier of the power five or power four, whatever you want to call it, are in the playoffs for their respective groups. Then you have bowl games where some are Power 5 against Power 5, some are Group of 5 against Group of 5, but also you get those overlap games. So you don't lose the games that are really fun, and you get to see some crazy things happen. App State against Texas A&M a year ago is a great example where you want to see those games. You want to see some crazy upsets every now and then. So you want to have those games intact, but also you want to give the Group of 5 a shot. And I think under the current way of things in the 12-team college football playoff, I think it gives them a hypothetical shot. I don't think it gives them an actual shot to make real noise in the playoff, and I think it gives them almost a worse shot than they had in the 4-team to win a title. So it's a very interesting thing. I think the Group of 5 will have a lot of weirdly will have a lot amount of power around what happens with the future of the bowl season, future of the postseason in general. I think personally more bowl games is not necessarily a bad idea. I just think you have to get to a place where everything is kind of set. You know what the future of college football looks like. You know what the employment or payment structure looks like. You know how it's affecting the colleges and the teams, and then you work from there. I think that gives you the best way to set up this in the most efficient, most logical way possible, instead of just throwing bowl games out there, hoping that it creates the ability for the financial burden to be off these teams the way that you obviously hope that it can be. So it'll be really interesting to watch all of this kind of unfold. I think there is a huge push from the Group of 5 to just have a bigger seat at the table, and I think the playoff is probably the best way for them to do that. So it'll be fascinating to see this unfold. I think it's something that I'm always on board for more football. There's no two ways about that. I just don't want there to be a situation where we are pushing more into a already very confusing situation. So I just hope that they, take a step back, hope they kind of take a second just to think about all this and set up get their ducks in a row, as it were, and really attack this the right way, because I think it can be a great idea. I just think as of right now, there are a million things that need to be figured out before we can start thinking about more bowl games. But we'll definitely keep your eye on that and kind of give you an idea of how that Group of 5 proposal is coming along, because that's a very interesting thing going around right now. But we're going to take our second break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the transfer portal. Tons is going on. It's starting to wind down. This might actually be our last full transfer portal update, but who knows? There's still tons of names out there that are big-time names, but some big-time guys came off the board. So I want to break down where we sit right after this, so stick with us.